Hello and welcome to another session of my Not Your Average Bible Studies. My name is Allie with Amory Speaks, and today is June 15th, Sunday. Welcome. I'm enjoying my Sacred Sunday routine. If you are new here, thank you for joining me and clicking on my video. If you're a returning audience, really appreciate your ear and hearts. Thank you for joining me again. This is session 29, and we are going to be picking up where I left off in chapter 15, not 13. I wanted to quickly just say, for anyone who has just kind of started here in the middle or has just found me, this is a bit of a side project of mine, and I call it, not your average traditional style because I'm not a traditional religious person. I wasn't raised in that kind of setting, and I'm coming around to that kind of stuff now here later in my life. I am reading the New Testament for the first time. I sort of came upon freely this Pocket Gideon's version of King James version, which I am reading. I began reading it on my own and found it to be so intriguing and different and curious and in sync. I don't know the words to kind of describe the truth that I was finding in it, that I just thought to myself, I'm going to do a Bible study. And I don't even know, I'm not even a Christian per se. I'm not any religion or anything, but I hear a lot of truth coming from someone who I've enjoyed to read and learn and be open-minded across such a variety of things, to study human nature and the world and nature in general, and many theologies and all different kinds of histories and cultures, bringing things around to this giant love one thing, one initial truth, one initial thing everyone's saying with one infinite creator behind it, and an infinite intelligence which, has created this here that we are. And that sort of truth I've known and I have within myself. So when I've come now near 40 years old to read this New Testament, it's amazing to hear these things, and to sort through them in my own. I'm glad to come upon them later in life, and to not have sort of I can only imagine really the distorted and easily manipulated experiences church could be in learning this type of learning scripture, learning religion at a young age, in a forceful, strict way, in a sort of these are the answers and this is all there is and this is that, very literal sense. I think, highly easily infiltrated and manipulated. Also, highly could be beneficial and well if openly taught in a nice way. In the truths that I hear in here, in the freedom, in unconditional love, in brotherhood and service to others, that is available in the words and in the works. But it's a convoluted mess that we are birthed within here, and I think also a bit of a test for us, sort of, to see if we can sense those distortions and lies, and if we will speak up against them, and much of what I've been reading and hearing just in the start here of Matthew, I was so surprised by the courageous bravery and the common sense and sort of steadfast way that Jesus speaks and it stands up to incorrectness and hypocrisy and inverted things, you know. It's so relatable to the world that we are a part of today. Maybe it's just relatable to every lifetime. It depends on whether or not you're sort of awake to it or not. But I feel these days it's so blatant. Everyone is waking up to it. It's so in our faces. I think the extremes are trying to really kind of break the elastic band, not just, they've overstretched it, and now that it's sort of overstretched and of no use, and their lies are shown that it couldn't just stretch forever and be good and it's all great every direction, keep it going. You know, now that it's all worn and stretched, they're just going to break it. They're just going to bust it, you know. And I feel so many parallels to sort of the time and the presence happening in the world that's depicted in the stories of the day in the Bible here, in the New Testament, in the fall of Rome, and all those other, Jerusalem, and all these other places. I'm not a historian, and I'm certainly not great with geography either. I do enjoy learning about all these things, and I have been spending some of my own back time watching different videos and learning about more about those places and spaces and time as much as I can, in relative ways that are, not the total propaganda that's just published out there and set in the mainstream, but to really look for those trusted sources, dare I say the words, but my own logical sense of who I tend to lean towards listening to, which is generally not the television's version of an expert, It's not anyway, I'm jabbering on here. Irrelevant to the point, and let's get into the scriptures, because what are we here for? We can allow the times to speak for themselves, and as I've mentioned, I'm no expert. I'm not even well versed in it, so why am I wasting time kind of explaining my inadequacies? Thanks for bearing with me through them, I guess is what I mean to say. Let's pick it up. I left off at verse 28, which kind of, cuts the scene. I loved that. I really love that scene. Not to drag it back into prior episodes. If you didn't listen to 28 and you missed the first half of chapter 15, I would really recommend going back and reading the chapter yourself even, and just reading the verses that I'm speaking on that I really enjoy are the last verses about the woman, the Canaanite woman. So like maybe 21 through the end, where we are, 21 through 28, excuse me. And you can get what you get out of that. Or go discover it on your own. Sit with it for a while, This is, I believe an underlying practice that Jesus is constantly teaching. Not just, he says fast and pray all the time, and that seems to be one of the go-to tools in his belt. But meditation really is as well. And I know some people hear meditation and they think of all these different types of hypnoses and sort of outside external happenings, trying to go into space or outer space or something like this, get out of your body. That's not at all what I mean, or what I think, in fact, he was trying to say or teach, but to go inwards in a rumination, contemplation, in quiet silence, in listening, allowing those inner organic intelligence within you to comb through the scripture, comb through the scene, comb through and allow just quietness and answers to come in, because in the dark he speaks, right? And it's helpful to close the eyes because we have very external distractions. So whether, you don't have to sit cross-legged, if that's not your thing, you can lay down, you sit comfortably in a chair. It's, I think praying almost is and can be that same time, except we've turned prayer into a wish lists and asking for help time. And it's, to me, that's not the time to do that kind of stuff. Those asking for help and worrisome thoughts and I need action or I need an answer is in the moment of that happening. And because we're alive in the moment, we get an answer in the moment. But when we sit down to do nothing, those times should be of thanksgiving, of a resonance of thankfulness, gratitude, or absolute quietness, of a single rumination, not an asking of a need to be met, right? Because we're not sitting down to do actions. If there's a need, an actionary need to be met in the external world, then we should be alive in meditation, actively seeking out, through living word, those impulses to come through in the moment of the situation, I think, is the way we're in true connection with the truth, with the Father. And we can really be an instrument, playing during the symphony, not just practicing at home, how you would have played it that night. You can't be the violin soloist and be on stage and mess it up and have not practiced, but at home go after the fact and practice and be like, oh, I wish I had done it like this. But yet, and I'm laughing because I'm laughing at myself. I do this to diffuse even my own kind of shame, guilt, remorse about times I could have done stuff like that, and I was caught up in stuff like that. And I can only speak from the truth of knowing that because I acknowledge in full visibility that I have done things like that. And it is quite laughable. And when we release it and we don't tie our worth or value to that, we let ourselves be free in our moment now to not make those same mistakes again. It's like an instantaneous change, a miracle in itself, because now we're anew, now we're afresh. We've learned the lesson. It doesn't need discovery any further. And real progression can actually be made. So anyways, I know I said I was done speaking on my own and was going to get to the scripture about 6 minutes ago, but here we are, 12 minutes and a half. So let's really get going now with verse 29 here in chapter 15 of Matthew. And Jesus departed from thence and came nigh unto the sea of Galilee and went up into a mountain and sat down there. And great multitudes came unto him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. Insomuch that the multitude wondered when they saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to be whole, the lame to walk, the blind to see, and they glorified the God of Israel. And Jesus called his disciples unto him, and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples say unto him, Whence should we have so much bread in the wilderness, as to find so great a multitude? And Jesus say unto them, How many loaves have ye? And they say 7, and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and gave thanks, and brake them, and gave them to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up the broken meat that was left, 7 baskets full. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took the ship, and came into the coasts of Magdala. Now, I really love that, and this is used many times to show what abundance comes from, and how belief that something is so makes it so. I love to sit and ponder on the magic of the literal translation, and of the possibility and the potentiality that did really happen. You know, it's quite amazing when I think on it in a more theoretical, philosophical, and metaphysical sense. I see great laws of positive surplus and abundance at work, which, when we are asked to take literal explanations in, sometimes, our mind thinks of these kinds of evidentiary validation points. And I find that interesting in its own self, and enjoy fostering those kinds of ruminations and contemplations. So much like I started off talking about reading those last lines from where I left off on the last session, I would offer here that we could think on this. And would say as well, there's a more nonlinear, esoteric interpretations available, even just in the numbers, right, of 7, and the mastery of that number. I know there's different translations in different times, and even, is it the same scene depicted from different Gospels, or has Jesus done this numerous times in different settings with different amounts of bread and fish, or leftovers, sort of, so to speak? Because it, and this could be just totally me. I'm not, like I said, I'm not well versed, and I've never even read the whole story through. I've had chunks here and chunks there and some exposure, and this will be my first kind of full sitting around it, so I could be misinterpreting. But I spoke earlier in an earlier episode. Yeah, I think so. He must have. That he was saying to the Pharisees, or actually it could have been when I was reading. See, I read a little bit ahead as well. I could be getting into my own journal memories. But he says to the Pharisees, or he's met with them, and whatever, maybe it's not them, it's someone asking for like tribute, and he says to his disciples, when they're like, we don't have any bread. Oh no, I know what it is. I'm confusing two different stories of two different things. It is the Pharisees, and they said something about the bread, and he says to like his disciples, don't eat their bread, or what they're quickening their bread with. Don't take in their yeast. So much like, don't quicken yourself with their yeast, is basically I think what he says. I forget the words, but don't take on their doctrine and enliven yourself with what they believe, because it's rotten and it's full of nothing. And the disciples are kind of like, but we don't have any bread. Or they didn't get it, and Jesus has to break it down for them and say, I wasn't talking about literal bread. Don't you remember I did that miracle? I made bread out of a nothing. Why would we be worried if we had bread or not? Physical bread. What I'm talking about is much more sacred, much more real, I guess, and is the energy of it and what we enliven ourselves with, our belief, and not to take on theirs, because they are, inverted in his eyes, and false hypocrites, with evil doctrines, generation of vipers, thieving off of weaker people, predators on prey kind of thing. But anyways, I think I will leave it there for today. A little bit of a quick one, but also I have much to do myself in my own world today. Be expressing my sacred Sunday, my appreciation for great love of life through labors of love of cleaning, making spaces fresh for others to come and stay at, as is my sort of job. So I have that to look forward to this afternoon, or before noon actually. It's only 9:30 my time, and I'll be doing that pretty soon. But for the afternoon, I will be doing that. But in my own way, like I said, I do find it sort of as a service. It's a great service to others, whoever will come to that place, this room, or the cabins, or whatever. They will find a good space. But also, I think it adds to a great service to God in general. Cleanliness is godliness. I really love that. I know that's more of an Old Testament-y term, but I do really resonate with that. So I'll leave everyone with that today. Hope you'll find your own way to, through your sacred Sundays, enjoying it and living life alive, conscious partnership with God, with Jesus, with whatever entities or ancestors even just within your own body and self as a great gift to God in that kind of way, or a gift to the whole world, Even if you don't really recognize yourself as one, you are one. Know that you are. Thank you for your contribution here. Thank you for listening to my Bible study, and I will see you next Sunday.